G'day there guys, and welcome to some more stories from Reddit. My name is Connor and thanks for joining me today. As always, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to hit like and subscribe, and also the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Alrighty, let's get right into the stories. Alrighty, we're on Am I the A-hole? This one was written by user Possible Gur, and it's titled, Am I the A-hole for leaving home after my fiance said I'm not his son's real mum? Sorry about any mistakes, English is not my first language, and I'm emotional. I, 29 female, met my fiancé Kevin, 32 male, 6 years ago when Joe was 2. I wasn't planning on dating a single parent as I felt I was too young to be a parent in any capacity, but I fell in love with Kevin, and when I eventually got to meet Joe, I fell in love with him too. Joe's biological mum was not in the picture from at the time. She wanted absolutely nothing to do with Joe. When I met them, she hadn't seen Joe for a year and a half. For the past 6 years, she hasn't been in touch with Joe or Kevin at all. I've helped raise Joe all these years. I see him as my own. I love him as my own. He calls me mum. In every way except for biologically, he's my son and I'm his mum. In February this year, we even made it legally official with adoption. It was honestly the best moment of my life. In the beginning of summer, Joe's biological mum contacted Kevin and asked if she could see Joe. We discussed it and decided that we would give her a chance. Maybe she'd needed some time to grow up. Kevin and Joe met her and it was fine. All was good at first. I even met her and she was perfectly nice and lovely. But the last few weeks, something has changed. Joe and Kevin have spent more and more time with her at Kevin's insistence. I have not been there. Joe has started acting out more than he ever has before, and I've been suspecting it's because of biological mum's influence. I feel like this was confirmed on Tuesday when Joe said he didn't have to listen to me because I'm not his real mum. It hurt a lot, but he's a child, so I can't be too angry with him. I talked to my fiancé about it later, and that I felt like maybe they should cut down a little on the time spent with bio mum and have me be there in the future. We got into an argument, and when I repeated what Joe had said, he responded with, well, technically you aren't his real mum. It felt like a punch. I couldn't believe and still can't believe he said that. I was so hurt that I just left to stay at my parents' place and have been here ever since. I've tried talking to Kevin and he's apologized over and over again, but I just can't get over that he sees me like that. I've talked to Joe and said that I just need some time away, but that I love him very much. He's so sad and there's nothing I want more than to hold him. But every time I think about going home and seeing Kevin, knowing what he said, it makes me sob. Am I awful for needing some space? I feel like a terrible mother, but I don't know what to do. Yeah, that's obviously a very disrespectful thing to say. Opie is well within her rights to, give it some time. Let's see what the comments think. Except you adopted him, so technically you are his real mum. Are you sure your fiancé isn't sleeping with his ex? What he said was relationship ending and cruel. You are not the a-hole for needing space. You guys need couples counselling immediately. Not the a-hole. Your fiancé screwed up and needs to limit the bio mum's involvement if she is negatively influencing your relationship with your son. Not the a-hole. First, consult a lawyer. Know your legal rights when it comes to your child, because he is your child. You get a say-so on how he is raised. Then find a couples counsellor and figure out if this relationship is over. But the fact is, even if the relationship is over, you're still that little boy's mother. I'm not saying your feelings are valid. I'm not saying you should take some space, but personally, if I were in your position and you love your son, then I suggest you get up and dust yourself off and make damn sure they do not push you out of your child's life. He let you raise this little boy. He let you fall in love with this little boy. And most importantly, he let you adopt this child. He is legally yours. So in this order, contact a lawyer ASAP. Know your legal options. Go home. Going home does not mean you forgive Dad. It means you do not want Dad to make a case of abandonment against you and to take care of your little boy. Do exactly what the lawyer tells you to do. Okay guys, on to an update. Hello, it's been a while, but I've been thinking more about the post I made recently. I never really stopped thinking about it to be honest, but I wanted to focus on real life and not what to write to strangers online. I really want to thank everyone that commented and shared their opinions, even the more outlandish ones. I won't bore you with all the details of the past year and try to keep this short, but I wanted to give an update because so many have reached out and asked how I'm doing, which is so nice. The night I made the post, I went back home to Kevin and Joe. It was emotional, but I needed to do it. Joe was already asleep, but Kevin was up. He was so apologetic and cried a lot. I told him we needed to talk, but not that night because we were both exhausted. We're going to have a few normal days for Joe's sake and then send him on a sleepover at his grandparents' so we could talk. I also told him I needed a mother-son date with Joe. The next day, me and Joe went to the zoo together and spent the day having a blast. I did explain to him, in a kid-friendly way, that his comment had hurt me a lot. He was very sorry and confirmed what I thought, which was that his bio mum had made comments like that. We talked for a long time, for an 8-year-old, lol, and I asked him if he wanted to keep seeing his bio mum, and he gave a shrug and said she'd been fun at first, but he didn't like when she told him off and yelled. Didn't love that she was doing that. I won't try to explain the whole conversation here, but I think it was a good one. He's such a sweet, sensitive little guy, and nothing makes me prouder than being his mum. Me and Kevin did have a long, emotional conversation the night when Joe went to my parents. Joe's bio mum was, and is, very manipulative. I'm not equipped to diagnose her, but narcissistic isn't far off. He was not sleeping with her, as many of you thought. Kevin and her relationship was not good. Abusive, I want to say, and the way it ended, with her giving up all custody and parental rights of Joe, was difficult for Kevin, and he struggled a lot as a single father. He admitted he never quite healed properly from her, but didn't really notice it until she came back. She manipulated him again, and it all brought back so much baggage he thought he left behind him. He said he knew there was no excuse for what he said, and he wishes he never said it, but everything was too much and confusing. I said I wasn't ready to forgive him, but I wanted to work with him. I know this will disappoint some of you who wanted me to leave him, but I cannot give up on this man who has been so wonderful for years over this. I felt like we deserved a chance at fighting through this together. The next day, Kevin contacted Joe's bio mum and said we needed some boundaries with her. He said he felt she had manipulated him in his emotions and he couldn't allow her in Joe's life with the way she was acting. We decided that going non-contact with her for the time being was best for us and Joe. We talked to Joe about this first. Thing is, she disappeared without an answer to this. Literally nothing. Changed her number and everything. I'm not sure what happened, but we do have a plan if she ever decides to come back again. We're a team through and through. We contacted a couples counsellor and a family therapist, and working with her has been great. We have done it just me and Kevin, as well as with Joe. Kevin has apologised profusely more times than I can count. Kevin has also been to individual therapy, which he says has been good for him. It's been a pretty intense couple of months with a lot of personal growth from both of us, but I believe we're on the other side now. I have forgiven Kevin and we're moving on, together and better. Also, the reason I decided to update today is I just found out I'm pregnant. I literally have told no one because I want to tell Kevin and Joe first, well, second now, in a cute way, but I haven't figured it out yet. I'll think of something, but life is pretty damn good right now, so I hope you all have a wonderful day/night/morning. Okay folks, and that's the end of that story. Yeah, pretty good ending there. I feel like that would eat at a lot of people though, even after you've worked on it. But it's great to hear that they're reconciling and working it out. I have a feeling that biological mum's probably going to come back at some point though. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. Alrighty, let's move on to a different story. Okay, this next one was written by user Existential Crisis number 4, and it's titled, I've realised I've lost all respect for willful ignorance and it may damage my marriage. I, 33 female, and my husband, 37, were having a discussion about politics, and we got onto the topic of our daughter, 7, which led me to expressing my fears about her rights and bodily autonomy. For context, my husband votes Republican and I've always considered myself independent, but recently have been shifting very far away from my younger, carefree attitude towards politics. I love him very much and I know for a fact that he loves me, but I've started finding his opinions naive and lacking depth. He is a very good man though, and has in the past changed his mind on several things when confronted with them. Further context, my cousin lives in a strict anti-abortion state, and almost died a few years ago when the doctors waited until she was actively dying of sepsis before they decided it was okay to remove the dead baby from her body, even though it had been dead for weeks beforehand. So needless to say, I had a wake-up call and sharpened up my principles until they're very shiny and pointy. Last night when we were talking about abortion rights being healthcare, I lost my composure out of sheer terror about the possibility of a similar disaster with my cousin happening to our daughter, and how I struggle to understand how he doesn't see the problem with his party, and that in fact I think he is being willfully ignorant to the danger I and my daughter face in favour of his idea about making economics work for our family. I also said that if our daughter dies due to something preventable, like the ability to get a timely and much-needed abortion, or gets shot to death in school, that I would let my own mother rot in a nursing home. She votes Republican too. And I'd never be able to look him in the face again, which would basically be me disappearing and divorcing him. I was crying and upset and explaining how scared I was, and he asked me in a very hurt manner if I'd actually abandon him like that. I'm truthful to a fault, and said that I would, perhaps out of a sense of illogical grief and betrayal, because I'd know my concerns were not taken seriously, and that they'd abandoned common sense and did nothing to attempt preventing a very real consequence of voting away mine and my daughter's rights to healthcare. I equated it to a slow-motion car wreck with our daughter in mortal danger and him just watching it happen because it doesn't involve his own body. I know he needs to hear it, but I think I was too raw and open about it to steer the conversation in a healthy way, and I have a very blunt manner. I apologized this morning for saying that I'd leave him, even though I knew I would, and he tentatively accepted it. And I said we'd talk about things later when I can articulate things in a healthier way, but I'm at a loss as to how to make it known how deadly serious this is to me, and not to make him feel like I'd abandon our marriage over just any sensitive topic. I do not need people telling me to leave him. I don't think I know how to make it any more digestible and be clear without going nuclear over something that has not happened, as our daughter is too young to suffer that yet. The rub is that I am the person who is changing the dynamic of our relationship, and I'm beginning to understand how politics breaks up families. Yeah, it sure does break up families, and with current events it happens all too often. Let's go to the comments. Ask him to name scenarios that he would accept the premature death of his daughter. Ask him to name what life-saving healthcare he would be willing to deny for his daughter based on principles. If he can't name any, ask him why is abortion different. Use your cousin's story as a hypothetical for your daughter, but be as graphic with it as you can be. But in all honesty, if you must labour so much to convince him to care about yours and your daughter's health and well-being, then this should also serve as a wake-up call to you. And if I were you, I'd take back your apology. You meant what you said and only apologized to comfort him. I say let him be uncomfortable. Why are you so concerned with the bluntness of your words and not concerned about how quick he is to dismiss you? I'm the daughter of a Republican dad and liberal mum. I'm honestly not sure why they're still together and think it is because they're older and retired. Luckily, I live in a liberal state that doesn't take away human rights, so I think it allows my mum not to think about it as much. It's been since Trump that I've really seen the division between them. I don't really have any advice to give you, but the perspective from a daughter and in a similar type of situation. I love my dad, but I don't have a lot of respect for him because I don't think he actually understands what's going on. It hurts as a daughter to know my dad votes for a party that is actively doing bad to a lot of human rights, mainly because he believes in the economics of Republicans. I also hate having to be around my parents in the evening, especially if they're watching the news. My mum definitely holds frustration from my dad and takes it out by saying mean things to him, and I feel like my dad doesn't take it seriously because I don't think he actually understands how scary this is for certain people. I wish my parents would do therapy together, and honestly, you guys should probably do therapy together if you actually want to make your marriage work without resentment growing. The worst part is all these men talk about the economics of being a Republican when all the data shows time and time again that those economics are absolutely horrible for 99.9% of us. They literally will cause harm to their families and others because they believe lies and don't want to hear otherwise. I understand why you don't want advice to leave him, but you may have to accept that as your reality simply because your morals, values, and ethics are no longer compatible. But of course, do everything you can to try to reach him.
Obviously, deep down, you know him and know he has the potential. I went through this with my own husband years ago, and I wasn't nice about it. It was pretty much a deal breaker for me then and now, and he was too busy being smugly libertarian on every other issue, so I had nothing to lose. That said, once he extracted his head from his rectum, I've been happy to explain things from my perspective as long as he's willing to actually listen. He's not perfect, but he gets a lot that men generally don't or take for granted. I do know that one of my big points was that his views meant I couldn't trust him. Women's reproductive rights sure don't affect men directly, but by not caring about the issue because they care about the women in their life, they are sending a clear message that women are interchangeable appliances. He either cares about the things that are important to you, or he actually doesn't care about you. He can't claim to love and respect you and want a future with you if he's voting against your basic interests. That is hurtful for you, but you are allowing him to center his feeling hurt because you threaten to divorce him someday. He's hurting you now, but he wants to focus on his potential future pain that would be a direct consequence of his behavior now. Let that sink in. He is telling you exactly where you stand with him in multiple ways. Further, he's deluded if he thinks voting for Trump or Republicans is going to actually be good for his finances, maybe in the short term. The reality is that any gains he makes will be offset by the tax overhaul and tariff system. If your wealth is dependent on your income in any significant way, Trump winning would put your income at risk as women are forced out of the workplace and into a housewife role. If your income depends on either of you working overtime, Trump is giving employers a way to deny overtime premiums through creative scheduling. A lot of tax deductions and credits that primarily benefit low and middle class families are being eliminated, while those that benefit the wealthiest are left intact or strengthened. We've already had a preview of his roided out trickle-down economy from his first term. Your husband is being incredibly short-sighted. I'm not sure what you're trying to achieve with this post. You say you don't need people telling you to leave him. However, the harsh reality is that this situation, that is your present and your future. As long as you stick with a Republican man, he's not a very good man when he puts your daughter's and every other woman's life at risk by voting for people who want nothing but destruction and power. That doesn't change, no matter how much you gaslight yourself that you can somehow fix him or see reason. Sorry to be so blunt about it. This. If a man is a Republican, if he plans on voting for the GOP candidate, even if Trump keels over tomorrow and is replaced by someone who's less openly insane, if he is willfully ignorant, he is not a good man. Full stop. He can help old ladies cross the street and volunteer at a soup kitchen as a hobby, but he's still not a good man because he does not actually care about women. OP, you think you can fix your partner? You cannot. Nobody can fix another person. You can't be the person who is changing the dynamic of the relationship when you're not the bad actor. You should not have to explain why rolling back women's rights is effed up to get someone to see that. He already knows and does not care. Alrighty guys, yeah, it goes without saying, please keep it civil down below in the comments. Alright, let's go to an update. Thank you to all who commented. Update, we had a serious discussion. I went into more detail about my concerns and fears, and it was intense. I was much better at presenting the case. I gave him several hypotheticals that involved a particularly gruesome set of circumstances involving his ballsack. I won't bore you with the nitty-gritty, but the gist was to shift his perspective. I told him to seriously consider carrying a tiny fetus in his ballsack, and the fact that the risks were things like exploding balls, sepsis, etc., and the myriad of ways he could end up dead, permanently physically injured and disfigured, or unable to produce a fetus in the future if he didn't have the option of removing the fetus from his ballsack. I asked him if he would even want to take the risk, and he agreed that he'd be very likely to remove it unless he was ready for those risks. I asked him why in the world would I be justified in telling him he has to carry it no matter what, and it might only be removed after it starts to explode out of his ballsack or his organs start shutting down, etc. Once he seemed to start grasping the enormity of what abortion encompasses and seeing why it's very important to not let unknown people control what options you have with no medical reason, I told him I lost a bit of respect for willful ignorance, and that I can tell he's avoided thinking about it because he knows in some way that it says something about his character, and I resented having to even give him a hypothetical in the first place, and that if he cares for me and our daughter, that he should automatically actively be using his empathy skills every day. I explained how I've demonstrated the capacity to care about and evaluate gender issues he's brought to my attention in the past. That was a difficult part of the conversation. I also told him that I don't trust him to always make a good decision for us, and that I feel alone in my shouldering of those responsibilities. He listened and let me talk a lot. He asked if I was going to leave him, and he was clearly nervous and bracing for the worst. I told him I'm not taking drastic steps like that, but I certainly will when it comes to keeping our daughter healthy and safe. I also started to say something about how I know I would lie to him in a heartbeat in a situation where our daughter needed an abortion or medical care, and he interrupted me to say, "You wouldn't have to lie because I'll be driving the car or buying the plane tickets, and we'll all go anywhere we need to." I burst into tears. We ended the conversation, and he said I laid a lot on him and he needed a break, but said he had things to think about. I didn't push any more politics, but I think I feel like my trust has been slightly restored. I'm not getting my hopes up, but I think he realizes that he's wading in dark and dangerous waters when it comes to our futures.
And now for some final comments. All of this reminds me so much of that scene in the show The Handmaid's Tale, where June finds out that she's not allowed to access her bank account anymore, and that her husband has to sign something for her to get birth control pills, and her husband dismisses her concerns, basically saying, "That's okay, I'll take care of you, no big deal, it's fine." It's easy to dismiss a concern when that concern doesn't seem to affect you directly, and the problem is that no matter what we say, no matter what example we give, some people will always have a degree of removal from an issue that can affect their understanding and their empathy. My own husband is empathetic and caring, but he doesn't understand why I, someone staring down the barrel of menopause, is so angry about abortion access restrictions. He doesn't understand why I, a woman in a loving marriage that doesn't look likely to end anytime soon, is upset about the end of no-fault divorce, or why I, as someone with no connection to prison, is upset about our horribly inequitable carceral system. And he'll say he understands my objections, but then he's like, why bother wasting energy getting upset about it? I don't know how to get across to him that just because it doesn't apply to me or us right now, doesn't mean it won't later. I also don't know how to get across to him that it's very difficult to see attacks on our ability to get a divorce or access an abortion as a direct slap against me as a woman. If someone punches someone else like me in the face while staring me directly in the eye to show me that they would be doing it to me if they could, that's very upsetting, but they aren't looking him in the eye, so he doesn't see it that way. Another comment says, "I admire the heck out of you for having this huge conversation with your husband. Thank you for making the case for all of us, and thanks for sharing with us. I hope your example can help others who need to have serious discussions like this with people in their lives." I'm glad you had this talk and that he is starting to reconsider his decisions, but I hope you're very clear with him that this isn't about him setting aside his views for this special case of you and his daughter. Other women are entitled to the same respect and autonomy that he wants for his daughter. If his position is that he'll pack the bags and buy the tickets for y'all, but he will nonetheless continue to vote for all the other women to be oppressed, he's not a good man. Opie replies, "We talked about the women getting turned away from the emergency rooms across the country because they were having pregnancy complications for babies they likely wanted to keep, and it was like I could see a gear start cranking in his head. Total silence, like he'd never considered that a lot of women who seek emergency abortions actually wanted their babies." Another comment says, "My husband and I had this discussion before our first was born. This was before Roe v. Wade was overturned, but the writing was on the wall that it might go. We live in a very high cost of living city for my job, but things weren't going well and we were debating moving. I told him that as long as kids were on the table, moving to a red state was out of the question. I refused to move to a place where I would not be able to get access to care that I needed and end up dead just because we were trying to have a child." My husband brushed it off. One of his close family members is one of the most prominent OBGYNs in the country. He said that worst came to worst, she would help us out. But I said, how exactly? Imagine I'm suffering from sepsis and about to die, and the hospital I'm in literally will not perform an abortion. What exactly will she do? And he stopped in his tracks. That ended the discussion right there. My husband had simply never had to consider it before. At the time, we weren't seriously thinking about kids, so he hadn't really thought it through.
In any case, in a few short years, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I ended up pregnant with our first child. I'm currently pregnant with our second. We still have regular discussions about potentially moving. Never once subsequently has he ever considered a red state. So glad he finally understood the reason why we need to vote the way we do to protect our bodies. But is he going to back up what he says he now understands by voting the opposite of what he's done before? I hate that many men only recognize women's bodily autonomy when they become fathers. I hope you really talk to him about voting Republican this year, otherwise this whole thing is really mute. And a final comment, I'm glad he understood, but he still votes Republican. The Democratic Party is still right-wing. No, they are not leftists unless you're talking about the progressives, but your husband deliberately chose to vote for the more racist, ableist, sexist, bigoted in every way party. The only reason you have this discussion is because it affects you and your daughter on the basis of gender and sex. I'm not going to tell you to get a divorce, but you should probably take a good look at your own morals and principles if you still think it's okay for him to vote the way he does, especially given everything that's happened since 2016. Okay guys, and that's the end of that one. Yeah, I mean, like, if you really want my opinion, then I agree with these comments here. I feel like all too often people form opinions on really important topics like this from very shallow and narrow-minded kind of perspectives. Like, nothing is as black and white as politicians want you to believe. But yeah, that's kind of as much as I want to say about that. What about you guys? Let me know in the comments. Alrighty, let's move on to a different story. Okay, this next one was posted on Am I the A-Hole and Relationship Advice. It was written by user Specific Koala, and it's titled, Am I the A-Hole for wanting my husband to hold my hand during birth? I originally posted this in Am I the A-Hole and it was removed. I can't see any of the comments now. I, 35 female, am 7 months pregnant. I'm married to a family medicine doctor, 35 male, and we've been together 10 years. Throwaway Reddit because my sister-in-law follows me on Reddit and reports everything to my husband. I'm reaching out to all of you to ask your advice on a fight my husband and I are having on our birth plan. My husband really wants to deliver the baby, which I can kind of understand. It's not uncommon for doctors to deliver their own kid. There is still an OBGYN there monitoring everything, and the doctor father steps in at the last minute as mum is crowning just to catch the baby. My husband has, I guess, always dreamed of being the one to pull the baby out, while I pictured it very differently. I thought he would be up by my head, holding my hand and helping me through it. He says he will do that, but the easiest part is the very end, where I won't need him anyway. He said if I really want someone there, his mum can step in. I've been on my own since I was a kid living in my car, so I don't have anyone I'd want in there with me except him. I don't really even want his mum in there. She's great, but he's my person. I know it would be cool for him to deliver our baby, but I really feel like I need him there. I personally didn't want our doctors to know he was a doctor, because as soon as any of my doctors or even our vet finds out he's a doctor, they talk exclusively to him. I don't even want him to go to the prenatal appointments anymore, because no one talks to me. They all talk to him, and I can't ask my questions to anyone but my husband at home. But he's already told everyone he'll be delivering his first baby. I guess I don't want this because I wanted him to be there as a husband and a father, and not a doctor. I see him as a doctor 95% of the time, and I wanted to experience this with my husband, and not my husband the doctor. I wanted him to be there for me, as this is my first birth, and I'm terrified. He just keeps telling me I'll be fine. He pulled in friends and family who also don't understand my point of view. They said this is his first child too, and to just let him have this since I had the honor of being pregnant. I just really wanted him to hold my hand all the way through it, and be able to share this experience as parents and people instead of a medical professional. I was hoping we could see the baby at the same time, and just be equals in this. Am I being selfish for wanting this to be my way? Yeah, I don't know, I kind of understand why he'd want to do it, but at the same time, it's her birth. She gets a say in what happens. And the idea of him being there solely as a father and a husband is a totally reasonable argument. Let's go to the comments. Quote, he pulled in friends and family who also don't understand my POV. They said this is his first child too, and to just let him have this since I have the honor of being pregnant. Who are these people, and why does everyone defer to your husband this way? Your request is totally reasonable, and your husband's lack of understanding is pretty glaring. Not the a-hole. Opie replies, his mum, sisters, and our really close friends that I guess are technically more his friends than mine. I haven't brought it up to my friends because I'm just not comfortable having our friends weigh into our relationship the way he is. I think his mum just likes his plan because it pulls her into the room, which I attempted to veto early on. I do love her so much, but I wanted this to be our experience. A downvoted comment says, not the a-hole, but you both have visions of how your baby will be born, so you need to talk it out. Chances are the very last part of the birth you are not going to be holding hands. He is going to be with you in the delivery room either way, but this is something the two of you need to resolve. It's not enough to say, I want what I want. Find a compromise. For example, if he holds your hand the entire time you're in labour and only steps in as doctor for the last few minutes of actual birth, wouldn't you both have a win? Focus on having a healthy baby and creating a happy family instead of on scenes you've created in your imagination, and that applies to both of you. Opie replies, I don't see that as a compromise. That's exactly what he wants to have happen. But the entire birthing process is incredibly emotional and exhausting. I don't want him to step away from those moments because they are what I picture to be the most painful and exhausting. I want him with me until the baby is out and we can hold her. I don't want to be abandoned during my birth while he and the other doctors catch the baby and begin the baby's workup. He's going to deliver the baby and hold the baby, all the while I won't be able to see anything because my legs will be in the air. I'll miss my husband holding and seeing my baby for the first time, and I'll feel completely by myself and like I'm missing out on those crucial first moments. Maybe you're not a woman, but nothing sounds worse to me than having my legs in the stirrups immediately post-birth with a sheet draped over my legs where I can't see my husband or baby meeting for the first time. Another downvoted comment says, I think you're overestimating what your attention span will be like in those moments. My mum let my dad catch both of their babies, and she told me that when she was doing those final pushes, she didn't care where my dad was. All she wanted was to get the baby out. She also said it meant a lot to see the joy on my dad's face, and having him hand her the baby instead of some random doctor or nurse made the bonding process more special. I'm not telling you this to change your mind. I'm just giving you an idea of what the moment could be like. Opie replies, I just don't see it playing out that way. If he is there to catch the baby, he's going to want to start doing some of the exams, and we're already having so much trouble getting the doctors to talk to me and keep me informed. It just feels like another link I'll lose to the situation to actually be kept up to date and prioritized in the moment. I know that sounds really silly, but I've been sitting in my ultrasound appointments and prenatal appointments, and they're focused on the belly, but not on me. Pretty much everyone talks exclusively to my husband. It's been a huge challenge to feel like I'm a part of it and not just coincidentally carrying the baby. Another comment says, tell him that you've had to do everything by yourself your whole life already. This is not one of those things you can do by yourself, and you want him there when it comes out. You just want support once from the start to the finish. It's lonely always having to take yourself places, to teach yourself, entertain yourself, and so on, and it's exhausting, especially growing up like that your whole childhood, knowing people can just up and leave. Maybe tell him you're feeling so effing lonely that you just want him to be there. If he doesn't understand, you may as well do this by yourself again. Surely the nurse can tell him to stay with you, and now is not the right time, Mr. Doctor, sir. Oh, it's out. Sorry, congratulations, your parents. Opie says, I'm going through so many comments, but I stopped and read yours 50 times and it hit me really hard. This is it. This is why I feel the way I do. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, Opie updates 9 hours later. I'm going to confront him tonight when he gets home. He's already going to be upset because we both have restrictions on how much time we spend on social media sites, and I have significantly surpassed that today and yesterday, which he'll know as soon as he reviews the router logs. I'm hopeful I can catch him before that makes him too upset. I did reach out to some of our mutual friends just to see what he's told them for why this is so important to him, only to learn he never discussed this with them. I think he made up what he's been saying they said. They were really shocked to learn we've been having this disagreement, and were actually quite supportive of an expectant mother controlling her birth plan. I'm quite nervous about his reaction to this as well, and I'd like to get ahead of this. Wish me luck, and cross your fingers for me. Fingers crossed. Now to the final update. Hello all. I first want to say thank you. Thank you every single one of you who took the time to reply, send messages, check up on me, send me messages, and share your stories. I've read so much more than I'll ever be able to respond to. Thank you. Those who took the time to share resources and volunteer your own time, you are angels in the flesh. Thank you. I'm so incredibly touched by this overwhelming outpour of love and support. Also, thank you to even the people who told me I was selfish or crazy, or any other derogative you chose to use. I'm not sure what helped me more, the people posing such great questions about if I felt safe, comfortable, loved, or the people telling me I was a terrible person. Something about attempting to reread my story as an outsider and seeing the comments where Redditors told me I was in fact the problem broke something in me, and I finally saw through the haze. But hey, maybe try to be nicer to strangers on the internet and consider your words more carefully. We're all people trying to get through life. So many of you are kind, caring, and loving individuals. Thank you for caring about some random on the internet. I don't even have words. I can't say a whole lot about these last few days. So much has happened that I'll be processing for years to come. All I can say is I'm safe and I'm free. Read into that as you will. My next steps are leaving this chapter of my life behind. I'm moving out of this city and I'm going to try starting again somewhere new. Somewhere beautiful where every time I look outside, it's hard to believe it's real life. I've always felt drawn to the mountains with all of their beauty and might. I don't plan to ever log into this account or even Reddit ever again. I did the same thing at 16, and I'm hopeful these last few decades have set me up for more success than I had the first time chasing a new start. If you read my story and you relate to it in any way, or you feel too smothered, voiceless, and alone every single day, locked in their house with someone who is supposed to love you, I just want you to know what I now know. That isn't normal. That isn't what life is supposed to be. There are people you can rely on, and strangers can be your best friend. The cost may be steep, but the cost to stay is so much more. Farm this post for all of the comments and support available. I pass it on to you, and beg you to use what resources you can find. The sheer volume of personal messages I've received from people in the same boat, people sharing support, people checking in to make sure I was okay. There's such a community here, and they will help you before you even realize you need it. I'm not sure what's next, and that's terrifying, but also refreshing. I haven't had that in so many years. Thank you. Whoa, what an ending. I imagine what she said to the husband didn't go down very well. Either way, good to hear that she's out. The way he was like monitoring her internet activity, that's kind of weird, and scary, I should say. Let's read some final comments to wrap this one up. That, quote, "we have limits on social media and he reads the logs" twist probably shouldn't have been surprising. Glad they're out. As soon as I read that Opie's husband regularly checks the router logs, I hoped that the following update would be her leaving the relationship. I'm glad to see that she seems to be in a safe place now. The update with zero details beyond "I'm safe" and "I'm free" is far more chilling than a lengthy explanation ever could be. I'm so glad Opie got out, and I hope she remains safe and finds her beautiful new place. You can just feel the anxiety in that first update. Quote, "he's already going to be upset. I'm hopeful I can catch him before that makes him too upset. I'm quite nervous about his reaction." She's dreading an interaction with her own husband and clearly walking on eggshells, not to mention the creepy "as soon as he reviews the router logs." WTF? So glad this woman and her child are free. I think the fact she managed to get out and be free speaks that something pretty bad happened that enabled her to get out without being tied to him forever. Quote, "I personally didn't want our doctor to know he was a doctor because as soon as any of my doctors or even our vet finds out he's a doctor, they talk exclusively to him. This is consistently an issue among medical professionals. My mum's a doctor and it comes up so often it's just tragic. They'll just pivot to her and she has to often tell them, 'No, don't talk to me, I'm not the patient, they are,' pointing to us, her kids or our dad. It's infuriating. It's the patient who needs to understand what they're consenting to and what the risks are. A doctor relative doesn't mean they're suddenly acting in loco parentis. Half the time it's not even ethical for them to be acting in a medical capacity for that degree of closeness. This becomes particularly problematic because in many situations with abuse, your doctor is often the person you'd tell, and then they can report the issue or help you escape. But if they're not even listening to you, how will you get the chance? Oh man, I remember commenting on one of the iterations of the original post and saying, you need to tell your obstetrician that he is talking to your husband and not you, and that you are the patient, and you don't understand, and you need more information. And if you can't do this with husband in the room, you need to still the moment when your husband is out of the room. The nurses always distract husbands with paperwork or whatever, so the OB can see the patient alone and ask abuse questions. And tell the OB then that you're not receiving appropriate care because the care is being geared towards your doctor husband. But also kinda screw that OB for gearing care towards the doctor husband. Usually OBs are pretty alert to that kind of crap. Yeah, well, certainly not in this scenario. I do wonder what happened to the kid though. I mean, the last update was so vague and, mysterious that you don't really learn what happens. I guess we can only guess now. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Alrighty, well that's it from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed those stories. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.